Okay, now we're going to do one of the most important moves of this whole thing, which is potting the end caps on the back of the battery pack so that the wires can pass through without water getting in. Last time I was really sloppy with the epoxy, so this time we've learned our lesson. I've got a wax paper mat laid out that's going to keep epoxy from getting on my nice ESD mat. I've got gloves on to protect my hands, and I've got a spoon that is ready to go. So here we go. I usually like to just break off the spoon because it gives me an easier way to apply the epoxy. Just like last time, we'll make a big glob. This time we're going to want to use a really liberal amount of epoxy. You want to have plenty of epoxy in this end cap in order to keep water from getting in. Just like I mentioned last time, in this case we're using 5-minute epoxy, but someone might even want to just use the Hysol E90, especially for this step. They just have to understand that it's going to have a much longer curing time. I think that this 5-minute epoxy will work well enough. So I'm just going to mix it, and then this is the crucial bit. What we're going to do is scoop this epoxy into this end cap. As you can see, I've pulled both of these out. I've pulled both wires out the same amount, which gives me access to where they pass into that hole from the inside of this. And so what I'm going to try to do now is just kind of scoop large globs of epoxy onto the inside, and I'm kind of particularly applying it to right where the interface is, where the wires go through the end cap. This whole part of the procedure to me is not super well developed. It kind of works well enough, but we're really interested in seeing what other people come up with. A lot of epoxy is also getting on the wires themselves, and that's fine. As you'll see in a few moments, what's going to happen is as I pull these wires through, it's going to kind of squeegee off the epoxy that's gotten on the wires, and a little bit will remain, but as the wires go through the hole, but it should be okay. So you can see I've done like 4 scoops now. It's probably hard to capture on the camera, but there's quite a bit of epoxy in there. And now what I'm going to do is pull both of these wires back simultaneously at the same rate. And as the wires go through this hole, it's kind of, I use the word squeegeeing, but it's kind of scraping the epoxy off. There's still a little bit of epoxy left on these wires, and that's okay. But most of it is kind of getting stuck on the inside cavity. The other thing I'm making sure to do is make sure that this other wire is kind of in the slot on this piece of acrylic. That's a little tricky to do. You just have to kind of fiddle with it. So now I'm going to pull both of them in. You won't be able to see it with the camera, but I'm kind of looking in as I do this and making sure that both wires go through that slot. Cool. So I've done that. I've kind of just pushed it in with my fingers. As I push, I can see that there's a little bit of epoxy that kind of overflows around the edges. I'm careful to make sure that epoxy doesn't actually get on the contact terminal there. That's at that one. Well, this is 5-minute epoxy, and there's plenty of epoxy left, so I'm going to do the same procedure for the other one. You want to be pretty liberal with the amount of epoxy you're using. Just put as much in there as you can fit. Don't worry about getting it on the wires. That's fine. And then there's going to be one last step, so we'll just keep on recording as I do this, which is that we're going to put the nylon battery tube over this, and the epoxy that's kind of overflowing will also kind of seal the nylon tube against this end cap. So the back part of the battery pack won't be removable. It'll be epoxied into place. So I've kind of done a quicker job of it here, but there's plenty of epoxy in there. And I'm going to make sure that both wires are going through the slot. I'm going to pull both of them simultaneously, so I'm pulling the same amount from each. And kind of using my pinky here, this is the one that has a spring, so I have to be very careful that the spring isn't tilted to one side or the other. It's just pointing straight out. Okay, so now the epoxy is still wet, and now's the part where I'm going to add the battery tubes to each. So I simply take it here, place it in, and it's going to epoxy itself into place as I do this. I'm pushing it, making sure it goes all the way to the end. I've measured it right. I have one more opportunity to fix it. If this doesn't seem like it's in the right place, I could pull it out further or pull it in more. And now let's do the same thing for the other one. So I've got this, and just pushing it against that. All the overflowing epoxy is going to hold this nylon tube in place. So this is the one that has the button cell. That's going to be really easy. But just to make sure, I'm going to look in and see if the spring is pointing straight out. Here you can see it's not. That happens occasionally. It's okay, you can fix it. I usually get a wooden dowel or something to push it in with. Of course, I'm not prepared for that, but I can find something laying around that'll work. So now I'm going to go get a wooden dowel and kind of push that into this to position the spring into the right spot. Cool. So luckily I had this laying around. I guess if you're doing this, it might be good to have this ahead of time just in case. You can kind of just push it in. I can see the spring. All right, now I've got it centered again. So if you look in, you can see now that the spring is centered. So yeah, that's good to note. You should have something like this laying around in case it ends up being kind of cockeyed. It's 5-minute epoxy, it'll glue pretty quickly. So I'll just kind of hold it here or occasionally check on it until my 5 minutes is up. Okay, wow, that step's done.